Well, hello you wonderful YouTubers, it's me again. Welcome to my channel. I might be speaking a little bit too loud, I'll quieten down a bit. You find me just on my way back to Lee in Gosport, although Lee dwellers would argue the point that it is part of Gosport. Just been to Loomies. Lovely cup of coffee, loads of lovely people, lots of lovely bikes. A good Saturday afternoon out actually. So what's been happening? I went up to Butser's Hill again to just to get a view across, because I love going up there. It's a lovely ride up there and it's a lovely view once you get up there. So yeah, it's all good, and it was a better day than the first time. I went up the first time, it was very overcast. The second time was much better, so slow it down. So yeah, that was just the one day out. Other than that, I've not actually done much or been anywhere. It's been a bit of a wet week, to be honest with you, apart from that one day that I went up to Butser's. What else is going on? I had lunch with my sisters, which is always lovely. I don't get to see them as often as I might like, to be honest with you. But so that was a very nice afternoon. Yeah, and that's it really for this week. Not done much at all. I am going to do a local history this week on the Royal Haslar Hospital, or the Royal Hospital Haslar, whichever way around you want to say it. It's all changed again, I'm sure. Should prove quite interesting, especially if there's any naval men out there, or women I should say, ex-Navy, current Navy watching. It's quite interesting because it was, let's face it, one of the three main hospitals for naval personnel. That's exactly what it was built for. So yeah, that's what I'm doing this week. Next week, who knows? I'll do another bike history next week. What else can I talk about this week? Not a lot, to be honest with you. There's more reports of dealerships going under, bike manufacturers having to rethink their products. From a Royal Enfield point of view, they got new models out. The main one I'm interested in is the classic 650. What a beautiful bike. In fact, they're all beautiful. The bare little monster of a bike, that one. Yeah, they got lots and lots and lots of stuff coming out, so well done Royal Enfield. Looking forward to seeing them on the road, and if I can ever afford it, riding them on the road. I actually thought I was going to be a bit late for Loomies, because they tend to disappear at about 2 o'clock, but it's currently, let me just have a look on my bike clock, it's 2:15, and those people just gone the other way. They're obviously on their way to Loomies, and there were people pulling in as I left, so it's very much that free flow of people coming in, people going out, people coming in, going out, which is good. Very, very busy cafe, but lovely food, nice coffee. Yeah, very good. So as I say, I'm going down to Lee, and I say that just about every week. I'm going down there purely because I love that part of my town. All along the coastline there, Lee, Stokes Bay, Hill Head, all the way along there. It's all good stuff. It's just a pity that it's a shingle beach. If it was a sand beach, it would be an absolute resort, I'll tell you. So I'm going to go quiet now. Hurrah, I hear everyone saying. I'm going to get on with the local history. Enjoy.
I'm going to give you in a nutshell history of the Royal Hospital Haslar in Gosport. As you already know, Gosport is my hometown, and although I was born in Portsmouth, I was only there for 6 months before Mum moved to a council place in Rownor, Gosport. So the Royal Haslar Hospital has always been a part of my life. There is also a Time Team video on this amazing building, and it was an excellent episode and revealed a great deal more than is in view of the naked eye. It's definitely worth a watch. If I remember to, I'll put a link just below. Up until recent years, the Royal Naval Hospital Haslar was always one of Britain's leading Royal Naval hospitals, and in its latter years a tri-service hospital. Built in the 1740s, when it opened, it was declared to be the largest hospital in the world and the largest brick-built building in Europe. At the start of the 18th century, there was very little provision for the medical care of naval personnel, and most of the surgery was done on board ship by the ship's surgeon. If necessary, onshore premises such as houses and communal buildings could be hired to serve as temporary sick quarters. The hospital construction began in the 18th century. The Admiralty selected and acquired the site for the Portsmouth Hospital in 1745 on the site that was previously Haslar Farm. Theodore Jacobson, who was a merchant and an architect, designed the building, and the foundations were laid in 1746. The work progressed quickly, and the main front building was completed in 1753. The first 100 patients were admitted on the 23rd of October that year, but the hospital was still unfurnished and construction continued until 1762, when the 2 parallel side wings were finished. Also built a detached chapel dedicated to St. Luke, and around the hospital were some 33 acres of what was called airing grounds, where patients could walk and take the air. A site of around 46 acres was enclosed with high brick walls, and building cost was more than £100,000, nearly double the cost of the Admiralty headquarters in London. In its early years, it was known as the Royal Hospital Haslar. Patients usually arrived by boat at a jetty directly opposite the main gate. It was not until 1795 that a bridge was built over Haslar Creek, providing a direct link to Gosport, and up to this date the hospital employed a ferryman. Built on a peninsula, the hospital guard towers, high brick walls and bars and railings throughout the site were all designed to stop patients, many of whom had been press ganged, from going absent without leave, or AWOL it is more commonly known. It had been designed to accommodate 1,500 patients, but as early as 1755 it was reconfigured to make room for up to 1,800. By 1790, overcrowding had become a serious problem, there now being 2,100 patients in the main building, and others accommodated on board hulks in Portsmouth Harbour in the mid-18th century. The hospital was administered by a physician and a council. The physician was the surgeon's senior medical officer, and the council consisted of 2 master surgeons, the steward and the agent, who was responsible to the sick and hurt, board for assessment of new arrivals, among other duties. Accommodation was provided for the senior medical staff in 2 pairs of semi-detached houses standing to either side of the main front building. Dr. James Lind, known as the father of naval medicine, served as leading physician at Haslar from the 1758 till 1785. In that time, he played a major role in discovering a cure for scurvy, not least through his pioneering use of a double-blind methodology with vitamin C supplements in the form of limes. In 1794, to improve discipline within the hospital, its management was taken out of the hands of the clinicians and vested in serving naval officers. They were housed in a grand terrace of 9 new residences built at the southwest end of the site, just beyond the chapel, facing the main quadrangle. The governor, who was the officer in charge, being housed in the large residence in the centre of the terrace. At the same time, 12-foot high railings were installed across the open side of the quadrangle to prevent desertions, and the ground floor windows of the wards were barred. Robert Dodds, who was a surgeon in Haslar in the 1790s, set up a separate operating room in the Royal Hospital Haslar, which was the first in any naval hospital. Prior to this innovation, surgery had been performed on the wards in front of other patients. The hospital treated foreign nationals as well as British service personnel. There are records of Portuguese sailors suffering from typhus being treated in the hospital in the 1790s, as well as French prisoners of war who were being held on prison hulks nearby. By the end of the century, the senior staff at Haslar are listed as a governor and 3 lieutenants, 3 physicians, 3 surgeons, the agent, the steward, a dispenser, or what is now known as a pharmacist, and a chaplain. Women were employed as nurses, and there was also a support staff of labourers, cooks, and other workers. During such times, Army medical personnel were drafted in to work alongside their naval counterparts, and in 1818, the southernmost block of the main hospital was set aside for the treatment of officers and seamen with psychiatric disorders. Haslar Naval Lunatic Asylum was the first time the only such institution, apart from some provision of Greenwich Hospital, for naval personnel in the UK. Previously affected personnel had to be sent to various smaller institutions around the country for treatment of mental disorders. To provide fresh water for the hospital, a 146-foot well had been sunk in the 18th century on what later became the site of the adjacent naval facility, Haslar Gunboat Yard. The water was raised by horse engine until 1855, when a steam engine was installed. 4 years later, a second well was sunk to a depth of 340 feet, or 100 metres, as well as driving the pumps for the wells. The engine provided water, steam, and motive power for a new hospital laundry, which was built in the grounds directly opposite the engine house, and connected to it via a tunnel under Haslar Road. The water pumped from the wells was stored in a water tower, which was rebuilt in the 1880s, while hot water from the engine was sent to a separate tank on the roof of the laundry. In 1854, the use of female nurses in the naval hospitals ceased. For the next 30 years, their place was taken by men, most of whom were pensioners discharged from active service. A new system was, however, instituted across the Royal Navy in 1884, with the pensioners being replaced by sick berth staff, most of whom initially were boys recruited directly from Greenwich Royal Hospital School in 1902. Working alongside the sick berth staff and supervising them in their duties were a new female corps of trained and experienced nursing sisters, recruited from civilian service. The Royal Navy's nursing sisters were later given the designation Queen Alexandra's Royal Navy Nursing Service. Between 1899 and 1902, a new zymotic, or for those of us that don't know what that means, an infectious diseases hospital was built in the south corner of the site, where patients with infectious diseases could be isolated, consisting of 4 ward blocks connected by a covered way, with a separate administration block in the middle. It was enclosed within its own boundary wall, and a separate block was opened in May 1904 for the treatment of sick officers, where previously they had been treated in their own designated rooms within the main hospital building. It was later put to other uses and latterly functioned as hospital administration block. In 1905, electricity was introduced to the hospital by way of a set of dynamos which were installed in the engine house. As well as generating electricity for the pumps and the laundry, they provided power for electric lighting, which was installed throughout the hospital, replacing the gas lamps. A new psychiatric unit was built in 1908 to 1910, consisting of 12 bed wards and padded cells. It served as an assessment unit from which patients, following diagnosis, would be sent to the RNH Great Yarmouth. The hospital was kept very busy in the First World War, as you can imagine, and in 1918, officers of the Royal Navy Medical Service was given a naval rank. Until the 1970s, the medical officer in charge of the hospital was a surgeon rear admiral, and between the wars, Haslar continued to provide preliminary training to surgeon lieutenants and instruction to new sick berth staff. During the Second World War, the hospital established the country's first blood bank and treated casualties from the Normandy landings. During 1940 and 41, there were frequent air raids. On one occasion, 80% of the medical stores were destroyed by incendiary bombs. On another, the library and museum were destroyed. In 1954, Royal Hospital Haslar was renamed the Royal Naval Hospital Haslar to reflect its naval traditions. A series of new extensions were begun in 1976, built over what had once been the airing ground of the asylum. The gallery, general stores, junior race mess, senior race mess, and west wing were also built. In 1984, a new building lying between the two wings of the original hospital was opened, housing operating theatres and various patient support services. It was known as the Crosslink. In 1993, following on from the Options for Change, which was the restructuring of the British Armed Forces in the summer of 1990, after the end of the Cold War, a decision was taken to cut the number of military hospitals in the UK from 7 to 3, one for each service, which left only Haslar, which would be reinstituted as a joint service institution. The hospital's remit duly became tri-service on 1996, whereupon it reverted to being called the Royal Hospital Haslar. A hyperbaric medicine unit was established at the hospital at that time. Finally, in December 1998, following on from the Strategic Defence Review of that year, the government announced its intention to close Royal Hospital Haslar, which was by this time in the UK's last remaining military hospital. However, only 11 years later, all medical facilities at that site were closed in 2009, and all services were transferred to the Ministry of Defence Hospital Unit at QA Hospital in Portsmouth. The 25-hectare hospital site was then sold to developers for £3 million later that year. On the 17th of May 2010, an investigation of the hospital's burial ground by archaeologists from Enfield Forensic Institute was featured on Channel 4's television programme Time Team. It established that many individuals, calculated at approximately 7,785, had been buried in unmarked graves. Plans were released in 2014 for the 152 million redevelopment scheme involving housing, commercial space, a retirement home and a hotel. The hospital was converted into retirement flats to the designs of Graham Reed Architects and Heber Percy and Parker Architects. Blimey, that's a mouthful. Between 2018 and 2020. In 1998, the closure of the hospital was announced and conditional on the establishment of an MOD hospital unit at the nearby civilian hospital. In 2007, the military withdrew Haslar and then continued to function for a short time under a civilian management before closing entirely in 2009. Well, that's it for the local history this week. I will do a motorbike history, which will be of the Cotton Motorcycle Company. Look forward to that.